Shehzad Qazi is the managing director of China Beige Book and joins me now live from New York. We're waiting with bated breath to hear any news about this meeting and this phone call, Shehzad. So what is your sense on this framework, this potential deal that we're anticipating? What will it look like, and how important do you think it's going to be between China and the United States, given the current trade war and tensions that are playing out simultaneously?
Yeah, well, look, I think the first point is that, some of the details have already been made public between the framework and the final touches are being put on. The real question is that will TikTok look like the biggest US-China deal that we get in all of 2025? Is this about as good as it gets for both sides? Or do we see any type of meaningful progress towards a bigger deal that addresses the trade concerns that the United States has and addresses a lot of the imbalances that the U.S. economy, of course, is undergoing given the massive amount of trade surplus that we're running with Beijing?
So U.S. markets just opening, the trading day, that was the cheering that you were hearing, and the Dow Jones obviously in positive territory. And in fact, markets are doing pretty well, specifically after we saw the Federal Reserve cutting rates by 0.25% on Wednesday. There seemed to be quite a nice boost. But if there's a deal of this kind in the works and big companies are going to be benefiting from it, I'm wondering what it's going to mean for tech stocks overall, and having TikTok US assets owned by American companies. I mean, this is going to be really interesting to see who's going to jump in and the sort of cohort of investors that are going to be involved.
Yeah, I think, again, a lot of the names have already been made public. The critical thing from the US standpoint, of course, remains that ByteDance, which is the Chinese owner of TikTok, will continue to retain just under 20% ownership, given the changes in US law. That, of course, whereas we may not get too much vocal opposition right now to the deal, I think will continue to mean that TikTok will remain in the crosshairs of policymakers for, I think, potentially years down the road. Another aspect, of course, is of all this is the larger U.S.-China, tech deal, if you will. If there's anything possible, certainly lots of positive and bullish news out, which would suggest that NVIDIA is not only increasingly going to be able to sell its chips that were approved for China, but more importantly, be able to now sell even more advanced chips into China. That news is very bullish for chip stocks in general, not just even specifically NVIDIA.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, and obviously for TikTok, and I remember when President Trump in his first term was trying to get TikTok banned because he viewed it as a national security threat. Where's the data sitting? Is it sitting in China? Is it sitting in the US? Those conversations are still going to come up, even if ByteDance still owns 20% of that. You mentioned chips, and it's really interesting when I see what's happening with NVIDIA and how China is targeting NVIDIA. NVIDIA, in the meantime, it's buying a little bit of Intel stock as well after the US government did the same. What is going on there? Because again, the issue of national security and who owns the chip space is going to be the clear winners.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, what you've seen is a rather surprising turn from the US administration. There has been a rolling back of export controls, as we know famously now that they're in the aftermath of Beijing, cutting off American and really global access to rare earths magnets. There was this chips for magnets deal that ultimately took place. And so rather than NVIDIA facing more licensing constraints and being the victim, so to speak, of more export controls, things have actually gone in the opposite direction, which has been by and large something that Jensen Huang, the NVIDIA CEO, is responsible for. And as I've said before, he's sort of winning the day in Washington, D.C. right now.
I want to talk about China as well, and obviously you run China's Beige Book. Really interesting to look at some of the data. I'm wondering how the health of China's economy is looking right now on the manufacturing side, on the consumer side of things, and whether there's a need for major stimulus by government. What's your prognosis there?
Yeah, look, our proprietary data out of China actually paint a pretty counter-consensus picture right now. The the mainstream narrative is that we've just seen China's summer of slowdown based largely on, of course, official data. And whereas we agree that there was a bit of a slowdown, we saw a turning point come in August. We saw consumer spending actually looking fairly decent. We're seeing that manufacturing on the order side suggests that the picture might actually turn there. And property is not necessarily all bad news, although, of course, property remains in a lot of trouble. Beijing has rolled out stimulus in the earlier part of the year, and they're going to be much more careful about just how much stimulus they need to roll out in the second half of the year. I think any resolution or even continuation, I should say, of the truce on the trade war front only brings the pressure down on Xi and others in China to roll out continued stimulus.
Shehzad Kazid, great to have you with us. Thank you for sharing your insights. We're going to a very short break.